This is Jerome Corsi, and today is Thursday. It's April 20th, 2023. We're at thetruthcentral.com. It's our daily weekday podcast, and I'm here with my producer, Chris, and we're going to get right into it. We have a lot of stories that I think are going to be pretty important to cover today. First one has to do with this United Nations. It's not yet a resolution. It's basically a decision that was come out of one of the world court type groups. But basically, the UN is backing these legal recommendations which seek to decriminalize sex with minors. Essentially, the decision came from this International Commission of Jurists back in March. It's just now getting picked up. It was getting picked up by Fox News. And Fox News is saying, essentially, with the backing of the UN, this Geneva-based International Commission of Jurists in March, they have money from UN AIDS, AIDS, and the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. And the report says that essentially that they want a human rights-based approach to a criminal law proscribing conduct associated with sex, reproduction, drug use, HIV, homelessness, and poverty. And they're now specifically backing this idea that we should decriminalize sex between adults and minors, in the idea that children have the capacity and legal rights to make sexual decisions. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty astounding that, again, the Democrats, the left, are pushing for sex with minors in the schools, etc. And now it's being reported, and it's actually the case, it's the fact, that this Geneva-based International Commission of Jurists is saying under this report, which basically says that we want to have laws that proscribe, outlaw various kinds of conduct with sex, reproduction, drug use, HIV, homelessness, and poverty. But in the process of saying that there's things in regards to all of these that are illegal or shouldn't be done, they're going to go for protecting the rights of children to have the capacity and the legal right to make sexual decisions. Well, again, I think it's a fundamental issue as to whether children even are aware of what sex means until a certain age, and that age is not in grade school at the kindergarten level. And the idea of pedophilia, all these breaking of rules and mores, one thing after another, we're going to pretty soon look like the end of the Roman Republic, where anything went. And the idea that there would be sexual mores that would formulate and preserve family structures, that's what's under attack. Let's cover a couple stories. I want Chris to comment. Chris, do you want to comment on that one in particular? That's a pretty hot topic.
Well, in an era where pedophilia is being normalized at this point, and I might be exaggerating to the point, but you're going to have you've had plenty of left-wing blogs out there trying to change the name of pedophiles to something called MAPs, minor attracted persons. The idea is to normalize things like this and look what's happening. The free world is falling downward, where you're looking at a lot of these third world nations. They have common sense leadership in a lot of ways. Some of them, or at least the emerging democracies do. I shouldn't say all the dictatorships, but the emerging democracies are definitely not quite as woke as, let's say, the free world is.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but human beings in general, I think, have a basic set of mores and common sense that recognize some of these things as just being ridiculous.
Well, more or less ridiculous. There were philosophical, moral taboos to these things centuries upon centuries ago, even dating back to ancient times. Now, I understand there were a lot of there were cultures that did perform such acts, and That's where a lot of these people will point to. But generally, there was always a taboo. Any anthropologist would tell you that there were taboos to these things.
That's right. Let's keep going on this. We could spend an hour on that topic alone. Biden is pushing to punish good credit homeowners to subsidize high-risk mortgages. We're back at this theme where the Democrats want to subsidize mortgages for people who can't afford them. And this current idea is that they're going to have a fee for those buying or refinancing homes after May 1. It's going to affect homeowners with credit scores of 680 or higher. And those people are going to have to pay roughly $40 per month more on a home loan of $400,000, about $500 a year, for homeowners who make down payments of 15 to 20% will be hit with the largest fees. And what they want to do is they want to take that money and reduce the mortgages of people who are not credit worthy. The changes will frustrate homeowners with high credit scores, as well as those looking to refinance, going to be punished for having strong financial positions. And of course, the homeowners, not only the homeowners, but the realtors are objecting, and this is going to make homes more difficult to sell. You're going to have punish people because they've got good credit or they have money. It's another income redistribution scheme, which the Democrats seem to be endlessly fond of. This next group is what I'm very pleased we had this story. We did a broadcast yesterday. Chris was the organizer, was the moderator. It was basically the civil rights group Project Sentinel, together with the Public Policy Research Institute of the London Center for Policy Research. And I participated along with Project Sentinel president, who was retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. And it was a very good discussion about the whole idea that eminent domain could be used in order to seize properties for climate change. And this is one of the issues that comes out of a Supreme Court decision, which allowed the a community to seize property to build a shopping mall. And Chris, I thought you did a good job. We've got it linked here, and people can watch the video. It was picked up by a good news service, and I thought it was a very good discussion, Chris. Thank you. Any comments on that discussion yesterday?
Well, thank you for participating. And I actually added to the NTD comment section under one of my other programs' names. There was a story. I don't know if you know this, Jerry. I, for 14 years, hosted a program called Revenge of the 80s Radio.
Yes.
I'm getting to this because it's very important. One of my favorite artists, I was able to interview her several times. Her name is Rose McDowell. She is a citizen of Scotland. So this doesn't happen just in America. Her family was taken from their home back when she was a child, I guess a teenager. Her family was taken from her home for a building project in Glasgow, Scotland, and forced to live. Remember, this is worse than America. Forced to live in a crime-ridden, gang-controlled section of the city. Winds up a couple years later, her 10-year-old brother was shot in a crossfire of a gang fight. That's why she wrote the song "Number 10 Orr Street." That was her old residence, which she loved. And these things happen to people around the world, and of course across America. They're forced to leave their homes, neighborhoods they thought they were safe. Some of these people get lowballed and forced to live somewhere else, maybe even substandard.
It's the decision is Cole v. U.S., which was a decision that goes way back into 1875. But I mean, basically, the court ruling allows the government to seize property for
in Ireland.
Its uses for creating infrastructure. Well, of course, this is kind of legislation that was used to build the interstate highways, and it does have some appropriate uses, but it justifies, say, seizing private property supposedly with compensation. But again, the compensation is often forced and not necessarily fair, and people don't have a choice that their property is being taken from them. The idea is that this public good or the common good overweighs personal interests in property. Now, if we apply that to climate change being the reason why you can have your home or your land or your business seized in order to put up a wind farm or a solar farm with all the solar panels to generate renewable energy. The idea here is that you basically are losing your freedoms to a pseudo-scientific idea. We don't really have, I don't believe, it's clear we don't have scientific proof that there is even global warming going on. We have my book, The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. Again, I really encourage people to read it because I think fundamentally we're dealing with a population that does not understand how the climate works. And the climate is complicated. It's a very complex mechanism that distributes heat around the planet. Fundamentally, the main driver of light and heat is the sun. And that should be obvious to everyone. When the sun is shining in the day, it's brighter. I mean, these are not hard concepts. At night, when the sun is not shining, it's darker. It's also colder because the irradiance from the sun that hits during the day is escaping back up into the atmosphere. Now, without greenhouse gases, we wouldn't be able to have a habitable planet. And this is not a stable place. Earth goes through many different changes and cycles, but they're not caused by a little bit more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This whole hoax developed out of the post-World War II depopulation movement. Harrison Brown, one of the scientists who was part of the atomic energy project in Los Alamos, New Mexico, the Manhattan Project, started writing books about there's too many people. We're going to use up the resources of the earth. And that got picked up by Paul Ehrlich, who wrote The Population Bomb in the 1960s, got joined by John Holden, became Obama's science czar. He was a nuclear plasma, very sophisticated form of nuclear physics. He was a scientist, and he joined with Ehrlich and said, well, we've got to have an existential threat, just that there's too many people. It's overcrowded. That's what the argument initially was. That's not getting us anywhere. So Holdren said, well, let's say we can find a way that say that if we don't reduce people, we're going to, in fact, cause the climate either to be too cold or too hot to be habitable. First, they thought we were going to have a new ice age because there was too many people. And the whole idea was hydrocarbon fuels. If we burn hydrocarbon fuels, they emit carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. We'll say this is the industrial age. There's too many people. We're producing too many goods with coal, oil, natural gas. At the time, coal was their main preoccupation. And that we're going to, in fact, have more greenhouse gases than the planet needs, and we're going to have a dramatic rise in temperature that is attributable to the industrial age. It was basically an anti-capitalist idea. And that's what it's doing right now. If we can get eminent domain for climate change, when the big climate change that occurs and will continue to occur, for instance, the Earth's orbit is not a circular orbit, it's elliptical, like an egg. And so when it gets further out to the most elliptical, we have an ice age about every 100,000 years. These are fundamental concepts. The oceans, the ocean currents, and how they flow, El Nino and La Nina, these are two currents which, depending on how they are flowing in the oceans, affect the temperatures of the Earth. Major water vapor is the major greenhouse gas, not carbon dioxide. And if we begin to say we're going to seize property because of global warming or climate change, again, it is pseudoscience, but its aim is to reduce our standard of living, depopulate the earth, have fewer people and less industrial activity. Now, again, I'm constantly wanting to get this thought across, and I will have an article, I believe, tomorrow in American Thinker on the EPA setting these standards, saying that we have to have new tailpipe emission standards, which means that we'll have 67% of our vehicles being electric cars by 9 years from now, 2032. Well, these are ideas that re-engineer society. And Chris, I think I want to skip for a moment to that next article, a little bit out of order, but the climate activists who are blaming rice for global warming, which is another. These are some of the things that they come up with. This is actually an article in the World Economic Forum. This is Klaus Schwab's article. And now, of course, rice is being produced. Rice is consumed in countries like India, China. I mean, rice is one of the fundamental nutrients for human beings around the world. What they're saying is that global rice production is releasing damaging greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, doing as much harm as 1,200 average-size coal power stations, according to the Environmental Defense Fund. Now, it's okay. So now rice is worse than coal. Okay, so the UN Food and Agricultural Organization. And why do we have this UN? Of course, I'm going to ask you that in a minute. UN Food and Agricultural Organization estimates around 770 million tons of rice were produced in 2018, with China and India responsible for about half that amount. And the predominant method for growing rice is basically to flood paddy fields, etc. But the problem is that they believe that the microbes that feed off decaying plant matter in these fields produce greenhouse gas methane. Because rice is grown so prolifically, the amount being created is about 12% of global annual emissions. So rice accounts for 12% of carbon dioxide emissions. I mean, again, if we look at China and India, which are also using coal extensively and eating rice, according to the World Economic Forum, there's not much chance we have, by abandoning internal combustion engines, that we're going to really do anything about net zero emissions by 2050, which is the goal of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Again, it's a major re-engineering. What the goal is here today is to fundamentally re-engineer society. Now, Mark Morano on Climate Depot had a very good comment on this today. Mark Morano was basically saying that everything that industrial society produces is opposed by the UN and the World Economic Forum. So this is not necessarily about shutting down rice production. The bigger picture, this is about the climate agenda from the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, which is joined by academia and the corporate world. And Mark Morano is saying every facet of modern society, whether it's rice, transportation, automobiles, industrial and internal combustion engines, airlines, whether it's eating meat, high-yield agriculture, I mean, everything you can look at is a climate emergency, and this global elite wants to take it over and manage them. They're looking for a managerial revolution. They want to put themselves in charge of saving the planet, which means putting themselves in charge of all aspects of modern society. And then we are the problem. We are the problem for emitting carbon dioxide or methane. Any hydrocarbon chain is opposed by these climate activists, which means that fundamentally human beings are the problems. That's why they call our next extinction the Anthropocene, that we are the cause of the next extinction. It's a suicidal idea. And this whole UN is promoting pedophilia, climate change agenda. They're doing absolutely nothing to promote peace anymore. I mean, the groups, we have wars going out with Russia and Ukraine. We have Iran ramping up violence with Hezbollah and Hamas against Israel. We have China on the verge of taking over Taiwan. And what they're arguing about in the United Nations is rice is producing too much methane, and therefore it needs to be eliminated. Hydrocarbon chains are natural to the earth. They are produced naturally. I think I'm going to take all the writings I've done on abiotic oil and just put together a book on that. I think basically people need to understand that dinosaurs did not create oil. It's a natural product of the earth. The earth's going to be producing hydrocarbons as long as we have the earth, at least functioning as it does today, because the chemical equations that explain how hydrocarbons are formed and oil, coal, natural gas are all hydrocarbons. They're combinations of hydrogen and carbon in different chains. Call it straight chains because you take different molecules, different structures of the molecules, depending on how many atoms of hydrogen, how many atoms of carbon, and how they're arranged in chains within the molecule equation. But these straight chains are very simple formulations of hydrogen and carbon. They're basically just straight linked. They're not even complex molecules. They're formed under temperature and heat, high temperature, high pressure conditions in the mantle of the earth, in the presence of a catalyst like iron oxide, which is abundant in the mantle of the earth. And the hydrocarbon fuels are produced and they outgas. You can see it deep down in the oceans. It's been measured out of these hydrotherm fields down where there's no light. And the microbes that are around these hydrocarbon chimneys, the bottom of the sea, live on the hydrocarbons. Carbon is fundamental to life on Earth. And the hydrogen-carbon chain, the cycle of it is very complex as is the weather. It's ruled by linear equations, not straight math. I mean, it's basically, you can have an equation. That's why these models really don't work, these climate models, because if you have minor variations in the measurements or minor variations in the variables, the same set of variables can produce different outcomes depending upon how the variables interact. So the climate science behind climate change is basically a hoax. And I think the UN knows it, but it's a hoax that in this postmodern world can be made into a narrative we're all supposed to believe, because that's the imagining a world without carbon. Well, imagining a world without carbon is imagining a world without human beings, because carbon is fundamental to our biological structure. So, Chris, why do we have the United Nations again?
If I'm correct, the United Nations should have been a place where nations were able to have coffee together, send a representative, talk about some disputes, maybe border situations, ways to trade, get things done. But the idea was there were some factions who wanted to make this a potential one world government, as you know, back even in the 40s and 50s. Thing is, though, really, even today, there's no way it has any power. They think it has power. What they do have is the power of the free press. Unfortunately, they seem to push the same propaganda the UN is and give people over the last many decades, they kind of gave people the thought, or at least subtly gave the regular population, people don't really pay attention, the idea that the UN is a more of a governing body, all things considered. But the fact is, it was really a place where nations could hash out some disputes, maybe talk about ideas, try to pull some resources together and have some coffees. Basically, that was the intent, and that should be the intent today.
Well, it's a kumbaya, let's all reason together. And it didn't, the League of Nations, which was the first attempt at the United Nations, did not prevent World War I. The United Nations was born out of World War II, and we've had even the United Nations vote to go to war in Korea. It's not stopped any number of wars that have gone on. Wars seems to be endemic to the human condition. We've had more periods of war than we've had anything else.
It got us
But
out of the Depression.
Well, and here we're going into a major economic slide, which we've covered. I think we're in a period of time where we are going to see a huge downturn in the economy. And what people are worried about is global warming. Now, let's go to the last story here I wanted to cover, which is that Robert Kennedy Jr. is now running for president. He made the announcement yesterday in New York. Now, I've met Robert Kennedy Jr. I've talked with him, and I didn't know his father well. I saw his father many times in Washington and Jack Kennedy when I was a kid. Jack Kennedy was assassinated when I was 17 years old, and I'm writing my second book on that, by the way, right now. Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to be a disruptive force in the Democratic Party. He doesn't fit naturally in either party. He's an environmentalist. He believes strongly in climate change. He's on that agenda, but he's also been an anti-vaxxer, and he's attacked Fauci, and he's attacked Trump for the lockdowns. The Democrats are not going to be favorable to many of Robert Kennedy Jr.'s ideas, and he is attacking the Democratic Party. Liberty Daily today is running a piece on Robert Kennedy Jr., which does not really fully capture what he's about. I mean, I generally like Robert Kennedy Jr. I don't always agree with him, but the Liberty Daily is featuring him saying in his announcement that he wants the Democratic Party not to be the party of fear, big pharma, wars, and censorship. Well, that's not going to be a very attractive idea within the Democratic Party. But I think you've got a Kennedy, and he does have the look of his father, Robert Kennedy, and he has the Kennedy aura, and he's going to fight for these causes. So you've got a disruptor in the Democratic Party, just as you have a disruptor with Donald Trump in the GOP. And I think what it is an indication of is that neither one of these parties, Democrats or Republicans, any longer really represents the American people. They're representing elites, global elites. And China, quite frankly, has bought the leadership of both parties for very little money. China's strategy of elite capture. And I'm not sure the Biden family will ever be investigated. I think it's time we need a new church committee. And the church committee met to look at the Nixon administration, its overreach of getting the CIA and the intelligence agencies to participate in domestic politics. It was a huge scandal at the time because the intelligence agencies were out there monitoring anti-war parties going back to the 60s. And it was a huge scandal to get the CIA out of domestic politics. Today, it's common knowledge that the UN is dominated by this global agenda, and the global agenda dominates our law enforcement, our judges, and we're in this period, I think, of great insanity, and some of it I think is even demonic. But the point is, in this period of time, I'm encouraging people to protect themselves, and that's what the Truth Central here is dedicated to, giving you the truth about what's going on. And I want to conclude today with a little mention of our sponsors, without whom we wouldn't be broadcasting this. First, I want to acknowledge Swiss America and to encourage you to go to the sponsors up at the top of the page and pull down the Walking Liberty $50 offer, which Chris is showing you now on the screen. Fill out that form. You can buy up to 250 of these coins at basically the value, the cost of the silver in them. By the way, silver is a very good investment and will probably appreciate faster as a percentage than gold as we get into this recession I'm projecting we're going to encounter. In the last 2008, 2009 subprime crisis. Gold and silver got to $2,000 for gold. They about doubled in value, and that could happen again. I think we're seeing this is a very good offer from a very legitimate company that I've worked with now for going on to 20 years. And the other sponsor that I want you to focus on is My Vital C. This is a company that Chris is getting to it, navigating to it now with the sponsor page, My Vital C. You can see that right there. And My Vital C has a lot of products with this molecule, which is carbon 60. It's a carbon-based molecule. It's got 60 carbon atoms around the nucleus in a cage structure. It looks like a soccer ball or a geodesic dome, called fullerenes, after Buckminster Fuller. There's a whole family of these carbon structured atoms that come together in cage structures, and they're very remarkable molecules. This company worked, it's in Houston, Texas, and worked with the original discoverers of carbon-60 who were at Rice University in Houston, and they did the manufacturing of the very first carbon-60 for the researchers. They're still very deeply involved in research on carbon-60. They produce both industrial as well as products for human use and human consumption. Skin creams, hair creams. I've been taking it for 4 years, and it's not an FDA-approved product. It's a supplement, but I'll give my personal testimony to it. I think it does aid longevity, energy. The skin and hair products work. My hair has developed color again. What I'm using is these carbon-60 My Vital C hair products and creams for skin. They're also available for pets. Dogs and cats love them. And again, they'll vitalize your pets just like they'll vitalize you. Please like this program and sponsor us. Like our sponsors, use the products. We'll be having more in the future, and we're going to be broadcasting every day. Any final comments here, Chris?
Just joining in here. Yeah, I have to tell you, the My Vital C bacon flavor, I really wish they'd make that for humans. I'd be into that. Would they let me take the My Vital Pet just for the bacon
I
flavor?
don't think it'll hurt you, but I mean, the dogs do love that, by the way. And I think for the cats, I think it comes with a salmon flavor.
Salmon flavor. Well, I make salmon dinners, and I'll tell you this: this salmon is absolutely fantastic. I can make a mean sesame and Parmesan encrusted salmon. So, maybe the cat flavor would work.
We'll have to have some together. All right, let's wrap it up. Today, this is Dr. Jerome Corsi, my producer, Chris. Today is Thursday, April 20th, 2023, and we're going to continue bringing you every weekday the news broadcast on the Truth Central. Please like us, share it around the internet. We're posting on many different platforms. We'll be on more in the future. I've decided to get very active again in politics. I thought for a while I might retire, but there's just too much going on, and I do want to make sure we make every possible effort to make sure you get the truth. So in the end, God always wins. God will win here too. May be difficult, but God will win. And we'll be back tomorrow on Friday for our last broadcast of this week. Dr. Jerome Corsi signing off. Thank you. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.